Hi, welcome back to FutureFast. And today we have Hilda Nikasi. And before I introduce Hilda to you, for those of you who are here for the first time, FutureFast is an effort to bring people to have a conversation with from a point of understanding what are they doing and how are they approaching future and what are the challenges they see in their own businesses from a future perspective. And the idea is to see if we can draw some pointers which could potentially help us in our own businesses or even life. And having said that, we also tend to ask our guests to make some predictions, and some could be serious, some could be fun, but irrespective, they are predictions, and that's how we go about it. And with that, Hilda, thank you so much for making time to join us today at the Future Fast, and welcome to Future Fast officially.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right, Hilda, can you please share your journey of becoming an entrepreneur with us?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Actually, it already started when I was at university. When I was at university, I was actually I was doing some student work, you might say. And here in Europe, it's called a hostess. And what we would do is go to big events, corporate events, and then take the coats of people and or register them or show them where their seat was or things like that. And when I was in my last year at university, I decided that I wanted to do more than just do this as a event or as a little job on the side. So I started my own company already in my last year of university because I had so many customers that really liked to work with me. I had made so many friends also doing this, and that was my first company that I ever started up. Back then, I'm 55, so that's a long ways. It's I think I was 22 or 21-year-old when I did that, when I started my first company. So in that company, I had that for I think about 15 years or so, and we grew and grew and had people for events, and we had parking guards and sometimes yeah, so the ladies, the men, I mean, we had all of that, and we would then also organize later on our own events. So we became event organizers as well. And then it even grew into incentive time. And then the crisis in 2008 came, the bank crisis, and it actually stopped everything. It was already in 2007 that we could feel that events, corporate events, incentives, which are travel programs for companies, for their employees because they worked well or they sold well, or for their clients because they bought a lot of stuff. So we would organize these kind of incentives for companies. Actually, from that moment on, we could feel already that that economy was going down. And almost from one day to the other, we had to stop the company, unfortunately, because nobody would do these trips anymore. Nobody would organize these corporate events anymore. So that was actually my first company. It didn't end very well, you might say, unfortunately. But well, that's how it sometimes goes in business. If you're not quick enough to change the model, which we were not, then sometimes you have to stop it. That's better than to go totally down into the rabbit hole. It had to do also with the fact that at that very moment, so we're talking 2006, 2007, at that very moment, airlines changed their policy. So if you would be an organizer of events and trips and a travel agent in general, you would get a commission on all the flights that you would buy from them and sell to your customer. But at that very moment, the airlines decided that they would actually not have these commissions anymore. So if you want to sell a ticket, then you would have to add a fee to that, a service fee to that, to sell that ticket. So that was like that was really hard because internet came up, and the kayaks and the booking.coms of this world were coming up at that very moment, and we were just not ready for that. We started doing that, but we were too late actually already, and big companies then took over immediately. So probably we would have never really made it, even if we would have switched to a totally online business, you might say. It's a very personalized business also what we were in, because if you organize incentives, you want to know what the aim is, what the objective of the company is, why they want to go on a trip, not just a fun trip, but there has to be something behind it. Very often they want results with those trips as well. And it's a very personalized thing that I still believe is very hard to do in an online world. You need a personal connection with people to know what they exactly need and to make a beautiful program that fits their needs actually.
Well, I have seen some online travel businesses today. They have divisions who actually does this part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So for their corporate partners, they have a division who will handle a custom program or custom design program or travel plan or itinerary, the whole thing. So they actually have these kind of divisions also here today.
Yeah, they do.
So
Yeah, they do exist. We were just not quick enough to switch, probably. That's the whole thing in 2006, 7, 8. It was the whole mindset of the people changed, and the internet became like the main source
so
of
probably if you were to package it right, you could have sold your business to one of these guys because they wouldn't have had this to start.
probably. Yeah. So
So
yeah.
so obviously that was one learning. And how did this shift happen from, of course, from college itself, you got into events. So looked like you just been an entrepreneur, and this kept happening and building up. But how did the shift to learning and development space happen?
Okay. So after that, I had to find something new, and I had this passion to work with people. And during a lot of these incentives, I would be the main person to go with the groups. Very often, we had small groups of boards of directors or management teams. I would go with them, and actually, I rolled into this business automatically almost, or naturally, because I was already with these people. I was already helping them to solve their problems, to have these meetings, to be a facilitator while they were talking on these trips amongst each other. I would help them and facilitate them in their conversations. So it was actually not a big shift to what I'm doing right now to learning and development, because from that moment I switched them. I started my own company again. After a while, I just stayed home for a little bit, and then I started up again till I had the right ideas to do what I needed to do. And I started as a one-man show, you might say, meaning that I was a trainer and a facilitator, and I would sell my services, my personal services, to companies, to bigger and small companies. Sometimes I would be called by other training companies, and they would ask me like, would you like to work for us, for this customer, for that mission? And I would do 2, 3 days, one day missions for these companies. And that's then how in 2008 or 9, I got in contact with one of those companies, and there were very, very interested in talking to me and to do work more with me. I was lucky enough that I speak 4 languages, so for them that was like a big plus. Never imagined afterwards that my languages would actually make me do this and make me go. So I easily speak Dutch, which is my mother tongue, English, obviously. French is the second language in Belgium, where I'm from. So that was kind of easy for me as well. And then I have some family, some relatives in Germany. So as a kid, I started speaking German as well. So those 4 languages were kind of natural for me, or they became natural for me. So that's how I rolled into this whole business of doing trainings as well, and then working with this one specific company in the south of the country. So it's a very small country, Belgium, but 1 hour driving, you are in the south, and people speak a totally different language than the language that we speak in the north.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we speak Dutch like the people in the Netherlands, although with a different accent, but very similar, same words and so on. And then in the south of the country, people speak French. So if you are a Belgian, you should know both languages, or you ought to know both languages, you might say.
Right. I've seen some of the videos of where the Dutch and Belgium border crosses, and I think your taxation system is depends where the door is, because it even cuts across some houses. So
Exactly.
if the door opens to Dutch, then the tax is to be paid in Netherlands. And if the
Yes.
door opens to Belgium, the tax is to be paid in Belgium. And the study was interestingly that it was cheaper to. I mean, I'm forgetting now. I don't know the video what was saying. It was cheaper to live in Belgium and shop in uh, uh,
Yes.
Netherlands. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because
Oh,
we don't have taxes on we have dividend tax, but we don't have added value tax, meaning that when you buy shares and you sell shares, you don't have to pay taxes on that. Because our tax system is, we already have a lot of taxes on everything and anything. So when we have a salary and we have our net income, there's a lot of taxes that have gone to the government already. And because of that, people, when they buy stock, when they buy shares, they are not taxed on that value on those shares. So if you sell for a added value, you don't have to pay any taxes. So that's the good thing about Belgium. The bad thing is
so
financially
looks
that there
like
are already a lot.
right. So you live here means you pay less income tax, but you shop in Netherlands would mean that uh, products you buy is expensive in Belgium, so you go across the border and shop there. So it's
It has to
cheaper.
do, yeah, it's cheaper there, but that has to do with the fact that actually the supermarket business is like really well developed in the Netherlands, and they really lower there's a lot of competition in the Netherlands. So if you go shopping, mainly grocery shopping, food shopping, if you go
Groceries,
to the
yeah.
Netherlands,
So on a daily
then
basis,
it's
people
much.
just walk across and shop there and come
Some people do. I live like 40 minutes by car away, so I'm not going to do that. I mean,
on a
I'm
daily
not going to
basis.
go all the way on a daily
All right,
basis, but some people do that. If you live close to the border, why not? For sure,
right.
absolutely. Similar to like, the other way around in France, it's very similar. So in France, grocery shopping is also much cheaper than in Belgium.
Or the same thing
So
happens in
people
this
would go,
border as well. Ah, all
yeah,
right.
on the south of the country, people do the
Okay.
same. Yeah,
So Hilda,
yeah.
what's your specialization? What is it that you train on apart from facilitating? On what is your area of specialization?
Yeah. So I started off with talking a lot about communication skills. That was my main thing in the beginning. And then I started to do work more on leadership. And what I try to do now is actually combine both. How can I be a good leader by communicating better, for instance? So I very often in the trainings that I do, it's about communication skills and it's about leadership skills, and all of that actually interconnected. How the way you convince people, the way you can have impact on people without manipulating them, obviously. That's what I talk about a lot. So leadership and communication skills, if you want to have the big two subjects.
All right. Well, just curious, Hilda, does uh, a leader in, say, Belgium, how different would they have to be from their communication standpoint versus a leader operating in, say, Netherlands
Mm-hmm.
versus also, say, France, because these are the two borders and you walk across and shop. But does leadership style and communication style demands a different approach to
Yeah.
uh, these places as well?
Yeah, you would say that in the northern part of Belgium, we're very much similar to Holland, to the Netherlands, while in the
Right.
southern part, people, they're very similar to the French people. So we adopt a little bit the style of the north in the north, and we adopt the style of the south in the south. So France for the south, and we do more Netherlands. style for Flanders. But what we see mainly is that, and because I am going through different languages, I see groups in the different languages. I combine also courses where I speak partially in French and partially in Dutch, for instance, or partially in English and partially in French. What we see is that what is different in both languages or in both parts of the country is mainly that in Flanders and in the Netherlands, hierarchy is not very much valued, or is less valued, you might say. So having a boss does not mean that you have to say sir or lady or Mrs. You don't have to do that. And you
It's more
will
a first name.
Yes, first name. Yeah, we call people by their first name. It's very common to do that in the northern part and also in the Netherlands. While in the southern part, this starts now, but it's a slower movement, you might say. And I'm not saying that we're all saying Mr. or Mrs. to our boss in the south, but we are more talking in the formal way. So in French, for instance, you have the word vous, which is you, but it's a formal you. And in Dutch, we have that too, but we will almost never use that in a context with our boss. So in French, we still use very much the hierarchy. People are maybe not telling their boss their family names or Mr. or Mrs. anymore, but they're still using the vous, which is the formal addressing of people. So it's more, there is far more hierarchy still involved in French-speaking Belgium than there is in Dutch-speaking.
Do you also cater to German, since you also speak German?
Yeah.
So do you also have German customers?
Yes, we do have, and I do have German customers, and their hierarchy is very important. And you do tell people you cannot say their first name. For instance, in most of the cases, we're talking about Mr. and Mrs. Now, in my trainings, I do address people with their first names because we have to work together that day or that week. So I ask people the permission also to talk to them in the less formal way, because in German, you also have a formal addressing or less formal. So I asked them whether it's all right to address them by their first name and also not to address them in the formal way, which they always agree upon. But when they're talking about people, and when I'm writing emails, for instance, or when I'm talking to the customer, I will always say Mr. or Mrs. all the time, which is for me always a switch that I have to make, because in my Netherlands speaking or my Dutch speaking environment, we don't do that anymore. You just say hi and the first name. Okay. So I always make that little switch here. So yeah, that is super interesting when we teach communication skills, that when you're doing that in an intercultural environment, you have to switch all the time and make sure that you're doing the right thing, because people in France or in Germany would be not happy if I would say, hi, Jeff, how are you doing today? They would not be happy at all. And they would consider as not being very respectful of me. While in Flanders, if I would say, hi, Jeff, how are you doing? They would see that as a total normal way of talking, even if we don't know each other very well. So you see, there's
the same thing towards the French border as well, right? Yeah. You don't still say, hi, Jeff. You would.
No, you cannot say that. You cannot say that. No.
Right.
Yeah, so
how do you see this whole evolution of communication training, which was obviously come from when initially it was talked about as when you meet one-to-one, and then it came down to when you write emails as well, and today possibly also when you do messaging on phone.
Yes.
So how do you see this whole thing evolving, and also perhaps doing these Zoom calls like what we are currently speaking? So how was your evolution? First you have to evolve, right? If you have to teach others, how did you find this whole process of employing these technology tools for business and communication? And how do you translate it from a point of designing your program?
Yeah, so definitely now that we're in an online context, and I do a lot of online trainings because I work mainly internationally, so that's a lot online. Yeah, I always ask, are you okay if I address you, for instance, like this or that? And most people say, okay, that's fine, because we have to work together as if we, and it becomes very often within minutes or 15 or 20 minutes, it becomes very familiar, you might say. We're going to do confidence. I mean, talk about confidential information about how they feel, how it is for them, about their behavior. And then it's far more interesting to do that in a less formal way. At least that's my approach. But of course, I have that American influence as well, and that Belgian Dutch speaking influence. And that's why I very often ask people, are you okay if we do it this way? Working online has changed a lot the way we do trainings, you might say. Now, in general, people are not as happy when you do a training online than when you do them face to face. When you have, like, after every training, they have to go do a form, like, how was the training, and we ask all kind of questions. And what you hear most is like, I wish the training would have been face to face. Still, on almost all the forms that we get, people say for online training, I wish it was face to face.
So,
So
but what's your thing? I mean, that's the trainees feel. What do you feel as a trainer? How do you see this? Obviously, this is enabled you to engage more people, right? And made a lot more convenient. You get to spend more time at home, perhaps with the cats. But but this whole thing, one side is a whole lot of convenience, and which is contributing to so many more things, right? That amount of travel time, the carbon footprint from the travel, right? Either you drive or fly, and even the impact on the health. So, so one side there are a lot of benefits. So as a trainer, how do you rank it? Are you
yeah,
happy with this?
well, let's put it this way. When before COVID came, we already started experimenting a little bit, like, can we do things online? But most customers said no, 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 no. Okay. So then COVID came and we had to switch, or those who were interested did switch. We had customers who said for 2 years, no way, we're not doing any training online. We just don't do this. Okay. So for us, it was like a big switch. Of course, it was a big shift. We had to learn how to speak in front of a camera, which we are normally not doing. We're walking around in a room. We ask for a specific setting in a room, like more a circle or a half circle or a U-shaped thing. And all of a sudden, there were all these people here in my room, in this virtual room. So we had to adapt. What I mainly do to have that feeling like we're all together, I ask them to switch on their cameras, which not everybody is willing to do, but I do ask it in the beginning, and I make little jokes about it during the training. Like when they turn it off, I say like, hey, I like to talk to people, not to screens and stuff like that. So I try to get them back in so we can have this real connection that I normally would have in a face-to-face
So
contact.
tell me something. What do you think is an ideal group size to do an online thing, particularly from a point of you're saying you want to engage them. So
Yeah.
what is a good number you think is
Yeah.
good to from a point of connecting, engaging?
Anything between 6 and 10 or 12 could be interesting. Below 6, there is not enough conversation. You don't have enough opinions, you might say. And it's very
Okay.
hard to put them into subgroups or breakout rooms. Well, you can, of course, 3 and 3, but it's limited. Like I said, then the conversations are limited. So I tend to go for more than 6, but not higher than 12, not more than 12.
But
Get that?
yeah, this breakout room is a fantastic feature, right? So you actually can get so many different perspectives. But I actually enjoy more numbers only because of breakout rooms. Without breakout rooms, I think it would have been a total disaster. But
Mhm.
uh, so keeping aside the breakout room, uh, 12 is still a big number, right? From a point of connecting with, or why not 20? Why 12?
Mhm. Well, it has to do with what we read also. We tried to find scientific research that says, like, how should you do this? and what would be ideal. And that's where they said, like, try to stop by 12. It's not that with 15 it's not going to work. Of course it's going to work as well, but you have almost too many opinions in a group. By the way, in face-to-face we also try not to go over 12 people, because you have too
Okay.
many opinions,
All right.
and you have to take care of too many people at the same time. As a trainer, it's hard to take care of 12, more than 12 people. You might say 12 is already a lot of people, because you have to check on them, whether they're still following. Are they with you? Are they understanding what's going on? I mean,
Right.
it's a lot of people to.
Becomes very tough even in small screens. So even 12 is too much to manage, right?
Yeah, 12 is really for me the edge of having a good training. Now, we've done trainings with 30 people, but the problem there is that you cannot engage as much with those 30 people than when I do that with 8 or 10 people. It's impossible. And then
So it's like you have delivered but not fulfilled.
yes, yes. And they said, yeah, it was not really, you talked a lot. Yeah, of course. Obviously, I talked a lot because I could not have those conversations. And it's strange enough, when you have 30 people in the room and you ask a question, there's maybe one person who is willing to answer, because there's too many people watching them also.
Mm,
They don't feel safe to answer a question, because I do that when I'm doing trainings, online trainings. I ask a lot of questions to the group, and I hope that there will be some kind of discussion coming out of that, so that we can build up a model or a tool or whatever. But if you have too many, they're not talkative anymore, so the safety goes down with the number when the number goes up. And that's why we say 6 to 10, 12 if necessary. Yes, okay, but do you feel safe and comfortable to talk about your behavior? Because that's what I do. I talk about leadership and communication skills. It's about who you are yourself and about your behavior. Are you willing to show yourself in a vulnerable way? Because this is practice ground. That training is practice ground. We try to experiment. I do exercises with them. I say, try it out. Okay, how would you say this in a different way? And if everybody's watching, for instance, if their boss is in the same training, I say, no, 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 don't do that. Don't put bosses and employees together in the same training, because the employee will not speak up in the same way than if the boss would not be there. So we try to mix groups, but yeah, like I said, not too many people, for safety. I mean, emotional safety reasons, we do that.
right. And tell me, what is it that you're doing now? You think that is going to help you do better in future?
Yeah. Okay. I think it's passion. It's all about passion. If you don't have the passion for it, then it's not going to work. And that's how I build up this company. I am only part owner of the company that I'm with, Progress Consulting. We are with 6 owners in the company, 2 people who started up the company 25, 26 years ago. And then I joined, like I said, in 2008, 9. And I think that's what keeps us going. That's what makes us a successful business. If I talk for myself, I say it's purely passion. I love what I'm doing. My kids sometimes, when they were younger, they would come home and they would see their friends, for instance, and they say, "Mom, why are you always so enthusiastic about your work?" I said, "Because I love my work. I love what I'm doing." Yeah, but when we go to friends, their parents are never talking about their job like that. You're the only one who does that. I say, well, yeah, then maybe I'm just the lucky one that I love what I'm doing. I'm extremely passionate about what I do. And that's also means that I do probably too many hours.
Well, Hilda, I don't know if you've read, I forget his name, Scott Adams, uh,
No.
the Dilbert comics.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. So Scott Adams is the author of Dilbert.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he's the creator of Dilbert.
Yes, yes.
So his biography, there is, I don't know if it was a chapter or one line I never forgot, is that he says passion is bullshit.
Okay.
uh, I have borrowed it, to be honest. I have borrowed it when I speak to startup founders
Mhm.
who come and tell me that when I ask, so why did you start this and this? I'm very passionate about this. I say, cut the bullshit. so, uh,
So,
so,
so what's
uh, uh,
behind?
see, somewhere I tend to agree that, see, I think passion is very important when you are doing something uh, like gardening or something.
Mhm.
Uh, it demands passion, right? When even cooking, for that matter, or baking, or designing something very passionately, it you want yourself onto it. But when you're working, when you're building a company, end of the day, we are trying to create something which is going to solve somebody's problem,
Mhm.
right? For which they're going to pay for it.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so that is where see, passion will not take you as far, or rather than being very, very pragmatic from a point of what is the customer's problem that
Mhm.
I'm trying to solve here, right? For
Yeah,
which they're willing to pay, and if I'm charging them, I better make sure that I'm delivering it
sure.
to the extent that they are
Mhm.
excited to pay
Mhm.
me for it.
Mhm.
So, but whereas if I'm approaching it from passionately, we end up becoming like people are so passionate about their products, they try to sell it saying you got to use it. It's like the Ford saying you can have any color of Ford as long as it's black. There may be an economic reason to it, but uh, but passion tends to make founder entrepreneur to think that I know better than you what you need, so you need to do it. So
Mhm.
that was my
Yeah.
argument, and
Yeah, it's absolutely a good argument, but I still believe that enthusiasm, that you show that you care about what you're doing for them, that you show that you care about their employees in this case, because that's what I'm doing. I'm working with employees or managers, doesn't really matter. I'm working with people, and I show them that I truly care for them. And that's what I call passion. So maybe it's a different definition of passion then also, huh? It,
no, I didn't. It just reminded me Scott Adams. So it's just that it's so difficult to take it out of your head once
yeah,
you
yeah,
hear it. So
yeah, yeah.
powerful, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. I never heard that sentence, but yeah, I kind of understand. You know what? I have always been a people person, if you want to call it that way. People person. I want to talk to people. I want to inspire people and motivate people. That's what really drives me. That is what I've always done since very young. That's my personality, probably. Being
uh,
very enthusiastic about life and in general. So I want to help people to find that also that inspiration.
well, I actually wanted to ask you what is the core learning of yours from your earlier business, which was into events. But I think this is what it is that you're at the core, you're a people person. So it was a very natural transition for you, no matter what you were doing previously, for you to be in this space was. But did you ever think that you should be doing something else? I don't know. I mean, was there something else that you wanted to do always?
um, I'll tell you a story. My mom, when I was growing up, she said, "Your aunt and so many other people, and herself, by the way, we're all teachers. So you
Ah,
should become a teacher." But my mom never has been teaching because in Belgium in the old days with the Catholic system, when you got married, you have to stop being a teacher because a Catholic teacher cannot be married. It has to be a nun then or a nun married. Anyway, my mom, so she did a little bit of that till she met my dad, and then she stopped being a teacher. Therefore, but she said you should be a teacher. You should be a teacher. I said no, no, no. I'm not going to go to teacher school. I'm not going to become a teacher. And now she laughs all the time because she said, "You said I knew what
yeah.
you would do in your life. I
Yeah.
knew it. I knew it." So
So,
no,
in some sense, you've become a teacher.
no, didn't want to become a teacher. And of course, I'm teaching, but still, I don't call myself a teacher because then I think about like middle school or high school or elementary school, and I say, no, 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 not with kids, not with kids. I wouldn't be able to do that. But with adults, yes, I love discussing things with adults. I love the intellectual conversations that we have. I love to inspire people and give them like a little thing, one little tool maybe on a whole day that they go home with, and they say like, I'm going to use this, and that's going to change things tiny bit, you know.
Right.
Then I do my job.
In India, in fact, one of the most acceptable jobs for women was teaching from our
Mm-hmm.
earliest, at least in the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
So even today, in fact, um, most most people think, I mean, things are changing, of course, now. We recently had, few years ago, even a fighter jet is flown by a woman. A girl flies. It was a few years ago. So, today, every sport, everywhere, women has come. But it was always believed that teaching is the ideal. There were few professions which were kind of earmarked for women, particularly since they
Mm-hmm.
go get married and go
Yeah.
family way. One was teaching, and a banking, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and few professions are kind of tagged with uh, in
Yes.
India. So
That's what
it,
my mom said. This is good for you. You can stay home when there's holidays. You will be with the kids all the time. You have to become a teacher. No, no, mom, I'm not doing that.
oh, exactly the same argument. Same argument. I mean, so much we think that world is so different,
Mhm.
but the moment we start talking, we find world is to be so similar everywhere.
Oh,
It's just that
of course.
we speak different languages and we look a little differently. But
In the end, parents want the best for their children, I guess. And that's why they're suggesting, like, you should do this or why don't you do that? But hey, we all have to find our own path. And finally, yeah, I came back on that path that I thought I would never do. And I love it. I love every moment.
wonderful. So, is there anybody or any number of people who you think have influenced in making the way you are today? Are there people that you want to think of, remember, or perhaps take their name if you want to?
Yeah, actually, it's when I started working at Progress Consulting as like a freelance trainer. I met the two owners of the company, and they really inspired me to go further. Didier and Regis, French-speaking people, who founded the company, like I said, 25, 26 years ago. And it made such a difference for me. All of a sudden, I was feeling like I was worth it. I felt like they trusted me. They gave me good work. They paid well. They did all the things that people in the past had not really done for me, you might say. And then in the end, they also asked me, well, in the end, after several years, they asked me, would you like to become a partner? Because we're growing really fast now. And would you like to become a partner? And that was very honoring. I mean, I was very happy about that. About becoming a part owner of a bigger company, you might say. So that's what I'm doing right now, or that's my job right now. Yeah.
Wonderful. Did you want to talk about what is a book you're reading or podcast you're listening to right now, and perhaps also recommend to our listeners or audience?
Yeah. I started with a podcast because I had read about it. It's a Belgian lady, and she lives in the US, and her name is Esther Perel. I don't know whether you've ever heard about her. And she has a podcast, How's Work. She has other podcasts as well, and she's also working with private people in private environments, you might say. She's a psychologist, and I very much like her approach on work. So
I
she's
heard about it. I heard about it. Yes, or rather, I read about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's Esther Perel. So she's half American, half Belgian, and I'm very much a fan of what she does, especially in this podcast, How's Work. It's quite an interesting podcast. She puts people together that work together, and then she has discussions with them. Like for instance, during a conflict or things like that, and she's trying to help them also with the podcast. So that it was quite interesting. It's actually about relationships at work, but any type of relationship at work that you can have with your colleague, with your boss, with somebody that maybe you fall in love with, and so on and so on. So she,
She's a psychologist, right?
yes, Yes, psychotherapist, psychologist. Yes.
Psychotherapist, yes. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think the one that inspired me most is Brené Brown. She has a podcast, Dare to Lead. So you see, all women, huh? That's what women do. They they go for women. No, not just women. She has a very interesting podcast, Dare to Lead, where she interviews also very well interesting and well-known people in the field of leadership, mainly. So Esther Perel is more like relations, you might say, at work, communication also, and Brené Brown is more about leadership, you might say, but there's always a connection with communication, obviously. So that one, and then my kids, they're all listening to Joe Rogan, and then to Andrew Huberman, and they sort of asked me to do that too, but I started listening to that, but that's not really my thing, you might say. Then there's another one that I listen once in a while, or parts of it. It's called All in One podcast. It's about several founders of companies. They have sold their companies. I think they were involved in Tesla and other big startups, you might say. And yeah, and they're American. They have very different opinions on stuff. And they have a podcast once a week, I believe, all in one. Super interesting podcast. They go over politics in America, but also in general about general other topics. They don't agree always, and they have really interesting discussions amongst each other.
Oh, interesting.
Podcast, yeah, all in one. You should really give it a try as well. So those
I'll check that as well. So very interesting recommendation.
yeah.
And please do share the link. I think it'd be good to.
Yeah.
So you sounds like you're more into podcasts. So have you stopped reading? I mean, I find more and more people reducing on their reading.
Yeah, I have Audible, and I read books through Audible. I don't read anymore, not enough.
No, I'm with you on that. In fact, it's almost 2-3 years that I moved to listening to books. My reading is significantly come down. I end up picking up books only those which are not in Audible, or of course, if some friends have written it, and you have to buy those books to encourage them.
Yeah. The books that are inspiring for me, or were inspiring for me, they're not the latest. I haven't read anything special lately. That is Daniel Pink, Drive. It's a very interesting book in that way, that Daniel Pink has gone through two researchers all around the world about what motivates us, what drives us, and he put all that information together, and he came up with 3 different drivers. And that's really a fascinating book, because it gives you it's like giving the key to motivation, you might say. It's probably larger than those 3, but with these 3, you can do already a lot. And I use his 3 principles of the 3 drivers. I use them a lot during leadership classes, where I ask people like, okay, are you dealing with people that are maybe less motivated? How can we work on this? And we go to these 3 drivers, and we see that how in our own little influence zone, because our zone might not be too big depending on what your level is in the company, in your own influence zone, what could you do about those 3? It's autonomy, mastery, and autonomy. I'm thinking autonomy, mastery, and the other one is damn, I can't get to it. Yeah, sometimes my head doesn't want to work with me. I have to write down things. That's really bad, because I do this like on a daily basis, and then all of a sudden just my brain won't do it for me anymore.
It happens all the time to me. So I in fact forget the names. Like Scott Adams, I was
yeah.
so I was trying to search everywhere because I was just not getting the name out. So it happened. So
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Hilda. This is wonderful, and I want to hold you back to talk about what's happening in your industry, what's happening in your business. So for that, we will huddle up together. And until then, those of you, I'm sure all of you have enjoyed it as much as I did listening to Hilda and getting a sense of her journey. And we're going to have a lot more conversation in terms of her work and her perspective on how the future is impacting and how they're getting ready on those things. So do join us again, and do share this with others who you think will like it. And once again, thank you so much and take care.